Don't you wanna feel right again? Don't you wanna feel whole? Don't you wanna feel?
What's up, my Republic of Heroes? Heart Hero 456 X65 here. Now, I wanted to make a much bigger video about Sonic the Hedgehog, and let's just say I'm probably going to end up saving that for sometime later this year. Probably either right on Christmas, or just maybe a few days after. But now, I kind of want to talk about something a little bit more personal. Since this is the season to be jolly, and to be giving, and to express, you know, basically any type of intimate emotions, you know, next to Valentine's Day, I decided I'd make a more personal video. Something that a YouTuber that I used to look up to named Josh Scorcher used to do, and a YouTuber that I currently look up to by the name of, well, and this might seem a little bit cheesy, Phantom Strider is currently doing, and has been doing since the beginning of this channel. I want to do list videos. Basically, I want to go over videos, games, you know, just all types of things. If you couldn't tell, I'm nervous as hell. I mean, I said videos, games. What is this, OKKO? May that show rest in peace. Anyway, with all that being said, I want to basically go over something that's a little bit more personal to me. I want to kind of sort of lay out my top 10 favorite video game franchises of all time. Not specific individual games, because that can be saved for a later date, but I most likely just want to go ahead and talk about games that I personally find enjoyable, like franchises that when someone asks me, or when someone, you know, mentions the word video game, these are the franchises that I specifically think about. These are the games that make me think, yes, this is the pinnacle of gaming, and no one will be able to convince me otherwise unless a different video game franchise comes out, or this franchise just starts to suck over time. You know, that type of thing. Basically, I just want to go over the video games that I personally consider to be games. Just the definition of what I believe a video game is, what a video game should be, and how video games in general should look forward, or at least should just look up to being the big daddies of video games that all the children can want to aspire to be one day. And I usually base this list off two things. One is pretty simple: the actual gameplay of the franchise and how they do something either original or, you know, make their gameplay work in their own fun, phenomenal, and genuinely great way. And of course, the story, characters, and literally everything else that video games don't necessarily need, but definitely makes the game itself 10 times better. Because yeah, a video game doesn't need music, a video game doesn't need, well, incredibly impressive graphics, it doesn't need a deep emotional story. Hell, a video game doesn't even need to be 100% original, as long as the gameplay is still solid as hell. So with all that being said, let's go over my top 10 favorite video game franchises of all time. Alrighty then, let's get retarded in here. So at the very bottom of this list, just so happens to go to possibly one of the cutest video game characters of all time, Kirby. Now, I love the Kirby series. I have always been a huge fan of the Kirby franchise because, goddamn, just look at how adorable everything is. I genuinely just love the world of Kirby, and I love how each new game explores it in a different, fun, and honestly, pretty interesting way. I loved in Kirby's Return to Dreamland how we got an amazing 2D platformer that allowed you to play as King Dedede, Meta Knight, and none other than Bandana Waddle Dee, the cutest boy around. But I also loved how all these other characters kind of have their own little mini arcs. Like sometimes Meta Knight is a villain, sometimes he's an anti-hero, sometimes he's just chilling with Kirby. I liked how King Dedede, for the most part, you know, originally started off as a straightforward villain, but now him and Kirby are just cool bros that chill out all the time. And I honestly just like the horrifying Eldritch Abominations that show up in almost every single Kirby game, because Kirby just has to be literally on the exact same level as a fucking god. But seriously, like, when it comes down to it, story-wise, even though we don't really get a lot of the backstory in the games themselves, and I do think that the stories could be executed a little bit better, I do like a lot of the characters and just the backstories and the deep lore that's just thrown into the Kirby series just for shits and giggles.
Seriously, Sakurai knows exactly what he's doing with the Kirby franchise, and I love how all of the game companies are just like, yeah, we're gonna add literal cults and actual dark demonic creatures inside of the Kirby franchise for little kids to kill because, well, demons are evil, and we're gonna have the cutest, most adorable character of all time kill them. Because why not? Not only that, but I gotta just give a lot of credit to the abundance of copy abilities and ways you can upgrade them, and the fact that even though now we have a fully 3D Kirby game now, something that kinda shows that the Kirby series can finally evolve in some way, shape, and form, let's just say there's a very, very big reason why Kirby is at the bottom of the list. As much as I love the Kirby series, the gameplay is just way too simplistic for me. I feel like Kirby's reluctance to evolve for years on end, even when they introduced new ideas and concepts, kind of made the series feel just a tad bit boring, in my opinion. Like, again, don't get me wrong, I love games like Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot, but at the end of the day, they just felt like Kirby's Return to Dreamland with extra added ideas thrown in there. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like they could have gone so much further with it. Honestly, this whole thing was solidified when Kirby Star Allies came out, and while it was clearly made to be more of a multiplayer experience for Kirby, you can definitely see where the whole situation of 2D Kirby came from, as it really just felt like more of the same, but without much added into it. And then we get to Kirby in the Forgotten Land, which, I'm not gonna lie, changes up the Kirby formula in a genuinely interesting and fun way. But we just don't have enough 3D Kirby games, or, well, we kinda just only have the one 3D Kirby game, so I can't really say that this is a permanent or a big change to Kirby, especially since, like every other Kirby game beforehand, it's incredibly simplistic, and, well, doesn't really change, only changes up the formula in very small ways, besides, you know, being in fucking 3D. But even with all of that being said, I gotta say that the Kirby series is still incredibly fun. Like, there's never been a single Kirby game that I've genuinely got bored with playing. If I simply pick up the game, play it for about like 2, maybe 3 hours, and then put it down again. Which a lot of people would say is sort of natural for video games, but usually when I pick up a video game, I want to at least have this feeling like I really want to pick this game up later and play the rest of it all the way through. But with Kirby, I kind of just see it similar to how mobile games are, in the sense that there's a lot to do in these games, but I'm not really gonna be jonesing to play a new Kirby game. So yeah, I like the series, it's adorable as hell, but it's number 10 for a reason. think Bioshock Infinite is just, again, not like a stain, and it's not like the worst first-person shooter out there, but it's definitely a blemish on an originally very clear, fair face. Wow, what am I, like, doing a bunch of beauty standards now? Jesus Christ, what the hell is wrong with me? I ain't trying to make video game companies self-conscious about their weight. That's fucked up. Okay, number 8 might piss a few people off because they probably don't even remember this franchise existing, but number 8 on my list is the Sly Cooper franchise. Yep, these 4 games have always been some of my favorite platformers, mainly because I love when a 3D platformer completely, like, rebuilds 3D platforming from the ground up to be its own original idea and concept. The first game, in and of itself, introduced basically a lot of the basics you end up seeing in most other stealth-based platforming games. Perching on certain items and objects, being able to hide in specific places, crawling amongst, you know, certain, I guess, ledges. You know, just doing a bunch of cool shit. Swinging and shouting and letting it all outing and all that cool shit. It all happens here in the Sly Cooper franchise. And again, I'll go more in depth with it in a potential review for the game. But overall, the first Sly Cooper game felt like it was a traditional platformer that took an original, interesting style on the platforming genre as a whole by simply making it based around stealth and being a thief. And boy, oh boy, does this game make you feel like a dirty thief. But of course, then we get to the second, third, and fourth game, which don't just give you the same feelings that the first game did, but they improve upon it. Instead of being more traditional platformers where you'd have to go to certain levels to collect a specific object or item in order to progress to the next big part of the game, here, you're completing specific missions that honestly make you feel like you're preparing for a legitimate heist. The first mission is actual just doing some cool recon. The sequence missions have you playing as each of the individual characters, setting up specific things in order to pull off and prepare for this big heist you're pulling off in order to steal a specific item. The next, and possibly the third act of every single small open world you're thrown into is either just the heist itself or doing the final preparations and then pulling off the heist, which could either lead to a really interesting and fun boss battle or just a really cool and amazing character moment that lets you really love these characters, which, by the way, I love all the characters in this series. I think they're all really well written, and even though Sly 4 did commit character assassination on one of them, and also had the worst villain in the series, I do believe that the other Sly Cooper games, for the most part, do a really good job at just pulling it all together and, you know, kind of just having well-rounded stories and character motivations. And again, just aesthetically, the entire games have always been really good. Like, I love this whole mix between the whole comic book cel-shaded art style that all the games have, and especially how they translated it into 3D. Like, I generally believe that Sly 2 and 3 have some of the best graphics on the PlayStation 2, in my opinion, next to Kingdom Hearts. And I also really fucking love how they evolved it in Sly Cooper, Thieves in Time. But even with that being said, the franchise is this low on the list, not only because it hasn't had a new game in 9 years, but also because the flaws with each of these individual games stick out a little bit more than I really would hope that they would have stuck out. See, these games fall under a very similar issue that lots of 3D platformers have fallen under, and that's the fact that instead of just being good 3D platformers that prioritize stealth, they'll throw in random gameplay gimmicks that sometimes can be pretty fun, like Sly getting different costumes in Thieves in Time, or, you know, Bentley's little hacking mini-games, or even additions to Murray's combat. But other times, we end up getting full-fledged levels that are nothing but overglorified vehicle sections, turret sections, and all these other types of sections that aren't really that fun at all, and honestly just cause the game to screech to a complete and total halt. And every single Sly Cooper game has these issues and problems, and it just makes me want to get back to the actual platforming, you know? But even with all of that being said, the Sly Cooper series is always going to have a place in my heart, and I genuinely believe that as long as we do get some new games in the future, that the series can perfectly redeem itself and possibly work its way up higher on the list. Oh, fucking come on! Okay, if we can get full remakes of Crash, Spyro, and even get a sequel to a video game that many people thought was dead for years, we should be able to get a new fucking Sly Cooper game. Sanzaru Games already has the script for the 5th game written, and there was supposed to be DLC for Thieves in Time. This is bullshit. Okay, number 7 was probably heavily expected, considering the first video I made about, you know, with this cute little avatar here was about this specific, you know, topic and franchise. So let's just get this over with. Now, I've been playing Sonic the Hedgehog since I was a young boy. I remember playing Sonic Flash games on SonicGames.com or 39Games.com, or that one that surprisingly showed up on CoolMathGames.com for some reason. I even remember playing fan games on my, you know, elementary school computer before it ended up getting a virus because I downloaded them from a very, very, very sketchy website and then had to move next to a girl that made fun of me because I smelled like pickles as a kid. And I also remember getting Sonic Rush and Sonic Advance 3 on my DS, and of course, like many Sonic fans, I watched so many Sonic the Hedgehog fan animations, read all the fan comics on DeviantArt, Murder of Me represent! And last but sure as hell not least, I also was heavily dedicated to following those incredibly cringy AMVs that would play like a Taylor Swift song or one of these fucking songs in the background, while also, you know, having some strange story with a bunch of the characters' pictures and words just flashing on the screen randomly. It was a time to be alive. And let's just say I pretty much had a huge amount of things happening to me once I joined the religion that is the Sonic the Hedgehog fan base, and I will defend this series to the day I die. But of course, we all know why the hell this is number 7. The dreaded Sega Cycle. It doesn't matter what good ideas Sonic the Hedgehog has had in the past. It doesn't matter if we get introduced to an amazing way to play as Sonic. Alright, I can go on about how much I love Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. I can talk for hours about how much I love Unleashed and Generations. And I can definitely tell you how much I appreciate the Sonic Rush duology and the Sonic Advance trilogy. But we all know that we're never going to get Sonic games in those styles of gameplay again because Sega, every time they make a mistake in the Sonic franchise, decide to completely throw out these ideas and change them for something new, instead of just making a better game next time with the same concepts and just creating something 10 times better. Instead, they want to constantly reinvent Sonic and make him different, and try to come up with a definitive way to enjoy Sonic, instead of just using the styles that they already have and perfecting them. And don't even get me started on the actual stories, characters, and overall music. Because it's so hard to hold back my anger on this topic. It's like really, really hard for me to hold it. Fuck it. I love the characters, the stories, and concept that this franchise has, but the fact that they keep getting thrown away, replaced with new concepts and ideas, and the characterizations are nowhere near consistent is just bullshit. So yeah, that just really, really fucking gets to me. Honestly, as much as I am pissed off at the Sonic franchise, I also realize that the reason I'm pissed off at the Sonic series is because of how much I love this franchise. Because this series has given me some of my favorite moments in gaming history, but it's also given me some of my most disappointing moments in gaming history. But hey, at least Sonic fans know what the fuck they're doing. Seriously, just watch any Sonic the Hedgehog fan animation, and by all means, please go watch Sonic Rebound. And no, I'm not just saying that because GamerGod7aces cameoed in my last video. It's actually a really good adaptation of the IDW comics, and I love the original take he's making on these genuinely great and fantastic characters. Hopefully Sonic can get better in the future, and with the release of Frontiers, it looks like it is. But for now, Sonic the Hedgehog is going to be stuck at my number 7, until it can properly improve, which I hope is very, very soon. Yep, we all saw this coming. Seriously, I fucking love these games. Kingdom Hearts has been one of the foundations of video games, in my opinion. At least, it was one of the first few games that actually got me to genuinely fall in love with video games as a whole. Alright? I don't know where to start here. I generally don't really know where to start, so I guess I'll start at the beginning. Kingdom Hearts 1 is, gameplay-wise, a really great action RPG in the sense that, unlike turn-based RPGs, where you literally have to wait your turn in order to fight, this is a game where you can just run up and smack the crap out of whatever the heck you want to. The combat system is very simplistic, and like many video games that have simple combat and, you know, just have very simplistic styles of gameplay, the world's level designs, enemy designs, and everything else is built around you mastering this simplistic style of play, and also using the other amazing parts of the gameplay, like the magic, the healing items, the different weapons you can unlock, and the different types of attacks you can use, in order to create possibly one of the best and most experimental types of games for its time. Because yeah, before Kingdom Hearts, I don't think I honestly remember seeing any other types of action RPGs in the same nature here. Not only that, but Kingdom Hearts 2 is just a perfect evolution of the gameplay from Kingdom Hearts 1. It's a lot faster, it's gotten way more interesting combat, and while some of the moves from Kingdom Hearts 1 that were genuinely useful are now relegated behind transformations that you're probably not going to be able to use most of the time throughout the game, it's still really fun. The worlds are built way better, the stakes are way higher, the enemies are a lot cooler now, although the Heartless are just basically objects with eyes plopped onto them. But seriously, like, Kingdom Hearts 2 just does a phenomenal job at perfecting the Kingdom Hearts formula. And then we get to games like 258 over 759 days. Then we get to Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. And don't even get me started on Dream Drop Distance. Side games in the series that I personally think take the original formula from the first and second games and just do something really fun with it. Like, the gameplay of these games, in my opinion, is really fun. Sure, they have their little gimmicks and their flaws that make them kind of annoying, but over time, they just become, like, they're just really fun games. Like, I generally just, I have a lot of fun playing them, and I'll probably go into more detail in proper reviews for these individual games. And, you know what? The gameplay of Kingdom Hearts 3 is nowhere near as good as 2, but it's still really fun. It's definitely better than the first game in the series, which, I mean, you kind of have to expect since all these games, you know, kind of came out on hardware that is the equivalent of the PlayStation 2. But for the love of God, Kingdom Hearts 3 is, again, a really great game. It takes elements from almost every Kingdom Hearts game before it and tries mixing it together into one fun playstyle that sometimes works, other times doesn't. But I mean, for the love of God, it's still really fucking fun to play. And of course, you got the bad games. I'm sorry, but I do not like Recoded or Chain of Memories at all. Okay, I like Chain of Memories, but the original Chain of Memories it's terrible. I'm sorry, it's just terrible. It's not fun, it's not interesting, it's not even that good. And I personally really just don't fully like it that much at all. And Recoded also, it also sucks. It's just a hodgepodge of different gameplay ideas thrown into one game, and it doesn't even have that much of an importance to the overall story. Which, speaking of which, the story of these games honestly feels like an anime. It feels like a Disney Final Fantasy fanfiction turned into a video game anime. And I both love it and hate it for that. Like, when it comes to the video games, like, when it comes to the characters and stories, I'm very split down the middle on this. Like, I love lots of aspects about the Kingdom Hearts story. I like the idea of the whole Chosen One thing being made completely and utterly bullshit. I like the whole idea of these powerful forms of light and darkness going to an ever-endless war. I like the fact that there are multiple Keyblade Masters. I like how the Disney characters are worked into the story. I like a lot of the ideas and concepts thrown into these games, but I genuinely just don't like certain things. Like, some of the dialogue is way too wonky and way too cheesy, in my opinion. I personally feel like Donald, Sora, and Goofy aren't really close of friends, and they don't even feel like friends most of the time in the franchise. It isn't until Kingdom Hearts 3 that they actually feel like a group of friends. And I'll be real here, when it comes down to it, the graphics of all the games, for the most part, is pretty much just the same in each game up until Kingdom Hearts 3, which I find very disappointing considering we could have gotten many of these Kingdom Hearts games on, you know, actual at-home consoles. But overall, Kingdom Hearts was the video game franchise that's more personal to me because it was the first video game series I ever legitimately fell in love with, and it was the video game that actually made me want to make video games in the future. When I first played Kingdom Hearts, I thought video games were, well, the same thing most people assume video games were, just over-glorified toys that virgins played with. But when I played Kingdom Hearts, I fell in love with the concept and idea of what video games could be, and I loved every second of it. The music, the graphics, like everything about the first Kingdom Hearts game hooked me onto it, and Kingdom Hearts 2 just reassessed and reinstated my love for this series and my love for video games. So it's number 6 on the list because personally, it's given me so much to look forward to, and by all means, I can't say that this series is gotta be any lower. It's not any higher, but it sure as hell isn't getting any lower. So, The Legend of Zelda. Yeah, no matter what anybody else says, I love the Legend of Zelda franchise. The concepts of the games are so simple, yet allow for so much complexity, that I honestly have to say that this is just one impressive franchise altogether. You've got 2 ways to enjoy these types of games, gameplay-wise. You got the top-down Zelda games, and you got the 3D Zelda games. The top-down Zelda games give you a very flat plane, a map, and a bunch of dungeons where you can solve puzzles in order to get to different locations and different areas, and face off against different bosses by using a different series of weapons, gadgets, and, again, sometimes just even more cool, fun puzzles. The 3D Zelda games are basically the same thing, except they're in 3D, you have an open world to explore at your leisure, and you can go into multiple different types of dungeons and fight all the different kinds of bosses you want to, in whatever order you see fit. And each of these locations, each of these bosses, each of the species and creatures, each of the worlds have their own in-depth lore, and all these just phenomenal and fantastic fucking... Oh boy, okay, I'm getting way too excited. How do I calm myself the fuck down? Oh yeah, I have to take some Adderall. But with all that being said, story-wise, I generally think the Legend of Zelda series in terms of lore and world building is fucking fantastic. Because while yes, the gameplay by itself is just very straightforward, you've got a really cool action combo that Link usually has in many of his games. You've got different ways of transporting yourself to all these different places and lands, usually by walking, sometimes by horseback, and other times by using a bird that isn't even that fun to fly. But when it comes down to it, the 2D top-down Zelda games, sometimes you can travel via a witch, other times you can travel via your feet. And of course the combat, the puzzle solving, and all of it is usually just very fantastic. It's experimental, and heck, every Zelda game gives you a new adventure, a new experience, and something even better. And, well, story-wise, you've got these amazing, rich histories to explore and look into. You've got these cool, quirky characters and companions you can have next to you that are sometimes really, really fucking annoying, like Navi. But you also get characters like Midna and Sheik and the big, tall, strong, buff lady that also just so happens to be in the exact same species as Ganondorf, who, by the way, is a pretty intimidating villain. Yeah, there are plenty of games where Ganon's just straight up intimidating. Heck, Wind Waker versions of Ganon is actually my favorite because of how cool his personality is. The fact that he's like this laid-back pirate captain that's like, oh yeah, I know I'm gonna fuck everybody up. Try me, bitch. I'll play some goddamn tennis with you, and I swear I'm gonna win that match. It's pretty freaking cool. But even with all of that being said, there's kind of a reason why The Legend of Zelda is at my number 5. And it's not because of the gameplay. Gameplay-wise, this series is pretty solid. I mean, besides the really shitty CDI games, which I can't really get my hands on because I don't own a fucking CDI, the Legend of Zelda series is constantly improving its gameplay. In terms of the top-down 2D games, you end up going from A Link to the Past to A Link Between Worlds to 4 links in a can, I guess. Like, you just get all these different types of links. There are links everywhere. And of course, you end up getting Link's Adventure or Link's Awakening, which everyone is called, depending on the region you live in. That's just a really great remake of a Game Boy Color game that I didn't even know was that popular. And for the 3D Zelda games, you got your starter ones like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, you know, a pretty great duology of games in terms of gameplay. And don't even get me started on Breath of the motherfucking Wild and Wind Waker and Skyward Sword, okay, that exists. And Twilight motherfucking Princess, that game is awesome. Like, gameplay-wise, these games have gotten this shit down. So yeah, why is Zelda so low on my list? Why is it only number 5? Well, that's probably because just because you have good lore doesn't mean you have good story. I'm sorry, but while sure there are some versions of Ganon that are interesting, and yes, there are some versions of Zelda that are interesting, there is like nothing in terms of character development, character growth, or just character personality in general when it comes to the Legend of Zelda series. Hell, Link is one of the most boring main characters I've ever played as in a video game whatsoever. I mean, at least Sora had a personality. At least Sly, with his very terrible voice acting in the first few games, had this whole suave Casanova feel to him. But when it comes down to it, Link is just boring as shit. He doesn't have much of a personality outside of a few reactions and streams here and there, and usually Zelda is also basically the same way. She's just a casual damsel in distress sometimes, and when she's not, she's this dark and brooding badass that can't talk to anybody. Like, it's just really, really weird, and I just... boy, it's just so boring. One of the biggest things that makes it hard for me to really get invested into Zelda games is the fact that Link himself doesn't seem to be invested into what the hell he's doing. Hell, in A Link to the Past, his uncle, father, parental figure fucking dies and he doesn't care. He just keeps on moseying along like nothing fucking happened. It's weird. It's just really fucking weird in my opinion. But even with all that being said, even though I can't really relate to the main characters, and even though most of the main characters don't even have much of a personality, Legend of Zelda is still solid in terms of gameplay, and while I haven't played every single, or at least beaten every single Zelda game, I've definitely played the majority of them, I still have a lot of fun going on these amazing, fantastical adventures. And I honestly can safely say that as long as these adventures stay fun and stay interesting, The Legend of Zelda is gonna be my number 5. I hope y'all like science fiction because my number 4 is Ratchet and Clank. I told you I love creative shooters and I love 3D platformers, so let's take creative shooting mechanics and mix them with 3D platforming. Yes, Ratchet and Clank is my number 4 favorite video game franchise, not just because throughout the majority of the series, not many of the games are actually bad, but also because, I mean, goddamn, just look at how fucking great this series is. Like, you really don't have to go that far to figure out why people love this series so much. Not only is it an incredible sci-fi story, but it's by far one of the best and most intricate sci-fi stories that I think you're ever gonna get in any video game whatsoever. The original Ratchet and Clank trilogy pretty much defined what third-person shooting is in every way, shape, and form. And honestly, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have many video games like Splatoon nowadays if it wasn't for Ratchet and Clank. The gameplay is pretty straightforward. You're given a bunch of creative, fun, some jokey, some serious weapons that allow you to basically blast your way through enemies and just annihilate anyone and everyone in your path. Seriously, like, dying in these games is actually pretty difficult. Like, you actually have to purposely give yourself a bunch of debuffs just to give yourself a bit of a challenge. But not only that, but you also have really fun mini games similar to, you know, Sly Cooper, that don't overstay their welcome. They're there, they're fun, and they actually allow you to get some cool upgrades and progress through the story in a very believable way. Not only that, but these games are just phenomenal at giving you incredible worlds to explore, amazingly beautiful levels, and just ginormous places to constantly go through. And every single level in the game feels like it's building up to something great and phenomenally amazing. Ratchet Deadlocked is another video game that I personally have to say takes the shooting aspect of Ratchet & Clank and gives you basically the best evolved version of it for the PlayStation 2. Seriously, Ratchet & Clank 1, 2, 3, and Deadlocked are just the perfect quadrilogy of video games. The PlayStation 3 gave us the Ratchet & Clank Future franchise, and while not every game in the Future series was good, I generally do not like Ratchet & Clank Full Frontal Assault. I think All for One was incredibly annoying, and I will admit Into the Nexus could have been just a tad bit longer and also a little bit better story-wise. Though other games in the series are still really, really fucking good. The Ratchet & Clank Future franchise is just great. And I might be in the minority here, but I actually don't mind the PSP games. I think Secret Agent Clank was pretty fun. I actually think Ratchet & Clank Size Matters, while not as good as the PlayStation 2 versions, are also pretty damn good. Heck, the PlayStation 2 port was still pretty decent. And I'll even give you this, Ratchet & Clank Quest for Booty. Pretty straightforward, fun, and simple Ratchet & Clank adventure that I actually do really like. And don't even get me started on Ratchet & Clank PlayStation 4. You know, that weird reboot that they tried making work for some reason, based off that really, really shitty movie that I swear to God should not have been as bad as it was. How do you fuck up a Ratchet & Clank? Nope. I'm not gonna get mad. Make a video about it later. But anyway, when it comes down to it, I genuinely do like the PlayStation 4 reboot of Ratchet & Clank. I do, however, hate that it doesn't have nearly as many levels as the original game, and also do kind of believe that the gameplay could have been just a tad bit more refined. But Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart came in with the motherfucking clutch, and by God, this is the game that made me wish I had a PlayStation 5. Because I don't. Thank God I have friends who have PlayStation 5s, and thank God they had the game so I could actually play through it and 100% it. Sweet fucking Jesus. Thank you for being a friend. But even with all that being said, I actually do think Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is just a perfect version of what a classic Ratchet & Clank game is. Third-person shooting, fun platforming, amazingly cool, dramatic, and epic set pieces, and just some phenomenal gameplay that gives you the ability to use different gadgets, suits, armor, and weapons at your disposal in a fun, interesting way that honestly doesn't feel overbloated and doesn't overstay its welcome. And boy oh boy, to top it all off, this franchise has some of the most interesting and fun characters I think I've ever seen in my life. I love how a lot of the comedy is just blatantly edgy just for the sake of edginess, which, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, works really well. Captain Quark is the funniest character in the series. Rest in peace, Jim Ward, because he is an amazing voice actor, and I really hope if they ever do replace Quark's voice, they get someone who is just as good as that guy. And honestly, I swear to God, Ratchet and Clank are just the most likable main protagonist you're ever gonna see in a 3D platformer. Next to Rasputin Aquato from Psychonauts, I think he's also pretty damn likable. But Ratchet and Clank are just really fucking good in my opinion. I fucking love these guys. And all the other characters are also really fucking fun and entertaining. I think Talon Apogee is really cool. I fucking loved Angela Cross in the one game she showed up in. And I genuinely do believe that when it comes down to it, the Ratchet and Clank series really doesn't have much bad about it. But it does have some bad about it. My biggest issue with Ratchet and Clank definitely has to be the fact that the stories kind of feel like they're sort of dragged along. I feel like Insomniac didn't really know what to do story-wise for Ratchet and Clank after the whole Dimensionator fiasco happened. I actually think Ratchet and Clank All for One, Full Frontal Assault, and Nexus were kind of pointless. And let's just go ahead and get the elephant out of the room. The PSP games, the PlayStation Vita game, yeah, they're also incredibly pointless, and you really wouldn't be missing anything if you skipped them. But don't get me started on the fact that, writing-wise, we keep losing characters. I am so freaking angry that we haven't seen characters like Sasha or Angela in years. And I understand why he was brought back, but Captain Quark seriously was not necessary in many video games. I swear, Talon would have been a much better partner for Ratchet and Clank A Crack in Time. Alright? Like, he would have been much better. Honestly, though, there really isn't much I can say that's actively terrible in the Ratchet and Clank series. Like, yes, All for One, Dead on Full Frontal Assault, and yes, Nexus were kind of fucking pointless. But overall, there isn't really much I hate about the franchise. All the villains, in my opinion, have been pretty damn fun. And honestly, I also ship Rivet and Ratchet. Don't fucking judge me, I will murder you. So yeah, let's move on, because I really don't have much negative to say about this series, and the negative I do have doesn't really bring the franchise down at all. Okay, so I might get a few weird looks and a few weird nods on this, but number 3 is Grand Theft Auto. Yep, GTA, the game that is known for running over hookers and killing innocent people. Although I've never actually killed a hooker in GTA. I don't know where people usually get that from. But yeah, that's basically the whole situation. Honestly, I love Grand Theft Auto. It is, in my opinion, the best video game that makes you feel like a criminal. The original Grand Theft Auto, or at least the original, few Grand Theft Auto games, were basically just these arcade-style games that allowed you to go around and commit as much crime as possible, rack up as big as a score as possible before you either eventually got killed or ended up getting screwed over by the cops. Grand Theft Auto 3 was the first one in the series to fully pull that whole arcade idea and bring it into a 3D open world for you to explore, commit different crimes, rob different places, and just do a bunch of cool stuff. And of course, Liberty City, San Andreas, and then 4, and I guess... Now that I think about it, I haven't played the majority of Grand Theft Auto games. Heck, I didn't even play any of the handheld ones at all. But that don't stop me from loving this franchise. I remember growing up on GTA 3, Liberty City, San Andreas, and 4, and loving everything you could do in those games. Like, I freaking loved the abilities to fly around in planes, to just commit a bunch of different crimes, to explore all these little towns, and honestly the characters and stories of these games were also pretty good as well. Grand Theft Auto 4 had possibly one of the most dramatic stories I think I've ever seen in a video game, which completely contrasted the whole idea of, being a merciless criminal where you gun down innocent people just for looking at you the wrong way and committing a series of horrific and messed up crimes. But Grand Theft Auto 5 completely reasserted the whole, I guess, what's it called again? Ludonarrative dissonance? Yeah, where the gameplay and stories reflect each other perfectly. Because yeah, Grand Theft Auto 5 isn't just a game about you being a criminal and performing a bunch of different heists. It's a video game that perfects the feeling of being a criminal and performing a bunch of different heists. And oh my god, is it fucking fantastic. There is so much about GTA 5 that I love, and there is so many great things that GTA Online has done. And again, I just love the gameplay. The third-person shooting, the amount of guns you have, the fact that you can basically take out so many different individuals in so many fun ways, the assortment of vehicles you can drive, the incredible missions and heists you have to pull off. It all feels really, really well done and well put together, and the story modes of these games feel just as well put together as the actual, individual world exploration that you get to do. Again, I'll be real here, Grand Theft Auto is probably way too high on the list, but honestly, if there's a video game that I can just pick up, play, and spend hours doing absolutely nothing in, just shooting and killing and doing all this other stuff, it's definitely gotta be Grand Theft Auto. I will catch myself going back to the older games all the time just to relive childhood memories, and then hopping right on Grand Theft Auto 5 just so I can get some, or at least laugh at some of the funny shit that Trevor says. Speaking of which, character-wise, I think the GTA series has done a pretty damn good job when it comes to introducing really fun and actually pretty damn good characters and stories and whatnot. I mean, these cities are based off of real places, so you don't really need that much lore or whatnot, you know, to explain why everything runs the way that it does. And the way that Grand Theft Auto 5 parodies real companies and just a bunch of other cool stuff, talking about how shitty real life is and, you know, kind of teaching you a lesson about how money doesn't make you happy, and also allowing you to do criminalistic things and actually having you sympathize for people who, I mean, let's not sugarcoat it, they're fucking maniacs. It's really fantastic in my opinion. And I don't necessarily think there's any bad GTA games out there. Sure, I'm pretty sure someone's gonna comment down about how Grand Theft Auto Vice City for the Nintendo DS was probably a terrible game, if that game even exists, because I heard South Park make a joke about it. But, come on, like, are we really gonna be counting the handheld games in this? They weren't pushed as much as the console games, and most people don't even remember them. Unlike the Ratchet & Clank handheld games, which people actually do kind of hold in high regard. Probably because they were actually ported to consoles. But even with all of that being said, Grand Theft Auto 5 is just the definition of fun to me. Not only because it basically allows me to get out all my hidden angst that the Purged movies were talking about, but also in the sense that it's just something that really, really, really allows me to feel like a criminal in a way that the Sly Cooper series or any other games where you're a criminal doesn't necessarily make you feel like. But, of course, there's a reason why it's number 3. And that's because I feel like the games have a lot of potential to be so much more. Everyone keeps talking about how Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be this next big revolutionary game in the GTA series, although that mostly comes from leaks and not any official information. But honestly, if we do get a Grand Theft Auto 6, I really want to be able to commit more crimes than just burning weed and whatnot, and robbing from banks and jewelry stores. Like, come on. I think before we get yoga minigames and golf and tennis minigames, we should be able to, I don't know, make drugs, sell drugs, make weapons, sell weapons, kill people for weapons, kill people for drugs, rob more than just a few stores, actually be able to perform heists solo without anything to do with the overall, you know, story, be able to actually have a lot more single player options in terms of killing people, becoming professional assassins, and literally any other criminal activity you could possibly think of first. And then maybe at the bottom of the list we can put yoga, golf, and whatever else, you know, you could possibly think of. But besides that, the games are fucking great. Yep, call me basic, call me mid, call me a bitch, call me whatever the fuck you want to. My number 2 is Super Mario, motherfuckers. I don't know why, I don't know how, but Super Mario still puts a goddamn smile on my face. The Mario series, for some strange reason, is still one of my favorite video game series of all time. And I think the reason why I hold it above all the other video game series out there is simply due to the fact that it's just really fucking fun. The music, the gameplay, all of it, it's just really good. Not only that, but Mario isn't even just platformers anymore. And no, I'm not considering the sports games in this list, but I am considering the RPGs, because the Mario RPGs are fan-fucking-tastic. You got the Paper Mario series, you got the Mario and Luigi series, you got the actual Super Mario RPG for the Nintendo 64, which for some stupid-ass reason hasn't gotten a remake in any way, shape, and form, or hasn't been ported over to any new console for some fucking reason, but still. When it comes down to it, the 2D Mario gameplay is just your basic 2D platformer. And it's the basic 2D platformer because Mario invented the basic 2D platformer. Jumping on enemies? Done. Moving and jumping and trying to get to certain places and basically getting around clever level design? Fucking fantastic. And sure, for a while, Nintendo was incredibly unoriginal with its concepts, but guess what? Now we can make our own 2D Mario games. Without Nintendo having to worry about anything. They straight up gave us the ability to make 2D Mario games. So yeah, you want to replay through Super Mario Land, Super Mario World, Super Mario's... yeah, all of them? By all means, 2D Mario is pretty much set for life. And if Nintendo ever did want to make a new Mario game, they can pretty much make whatever the hell they want to in terms of 2D Mario, as long as the 2D platforming is just as fun, original, exciting, and as intricate as they've always been. Then we get to the 3D Mario games. Super Mario 64 was the literal progenitor for all 3D platformers everywhere. It introduced gameplay concepts that other video games would end up implementing. Heck, without Super Mario 64, most of the ideas and most of the basic concepts of video games that you have now would not exist. And Nintendo somehow manages to improve upon the 64 style with every new 3D Mario game. Seriously, Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario Galaxy, Super Mario Galaxy 2, and Mario Odyssey. And don't even get me started on Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, because that is a video for another day. Honestly, it's fantastic. And again, the Mario RPGs are also really fun. Heck, they even answer my questions about the whole character. Well, they kind of, I guess, not answering my questions per se. Again, I know I'm cutting myself off a lot here, but seriously, like, they even addressed the biggest issue I had with Mario, and that's the fact that none of the characters had any real personality or were really animated and whatnot. And yes, I consider the Mario RPGs to be non-spin-offs, because technically they are canon to the overall story, and Nintendo considers them mainline games, so I sure as hell consider them that too. Honestly, Mario and Luigi's personality in these games are really fleshed out. Mario is this heroic and righteous person who doesn't change that much, but is still willing to put himself in dangerous situations to help people. Luigi is a bit of a coward, but he's still there to, fight with his brother and help them out. Peach is a very sweet, kind-hearted person who doesn't like fighting, but hell, she will throw a motherfucking punch if she has to. It's really, really, really fun! And I think that's just the main reason why Super Mario is number 2 on my list. It's the most consistent, it doesn't have that many issues, and it's just the most fun. Plus, Nintendo honestly believes that there's no definitive way to play as Mario. They will give you multiple ways to play as this plumber boy, simply because they know that Mario is a character first and foremost made to have fun with. They care more about gameplay than anything, and if they have an interesting story, if they have an interesting concept, they spend their entire games fleshing that idea out. And Mario is just really fucking consistent. Seriously, besides the fucking CDI games, name one bad Mario game off the top of your head. Just one terrible one. Alright? One that's like so bad that you can't even pick it up and play it. And no, the CDI games do not count because they were not made by fucking Nintendo. So yeah, with all of that being said, there is one small problem and issue I do have with the series, and that is of course the fact that, well, Nintendo's kind of unoriginal. Like, yeah, the gameplay is fun and all, and yes, the water levels, jungles, and all things do have different art styles and whatnot, but, I mean, it's really just more the same. Honestly, if you want something original and fun, it's best to go for the 3D Mario games, but even then, they still have more of the same. I mean, you got grass, you got lava, jungle, underwater, more jungle, more underwater, castle, and then lava. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention snow? It's all basic the same stuff. Again, there's only so many times Nintendo can use this exact same aesthetic and put a new coat of paint on it before it gets boring. But most Mario games aren't like that. It's usually just the 2D Mario games that are like that. And even when we get a 3D Mario game that does something similar to what the 2D games did, case in point Super Mario Land, we always get something new thrown on top of it. It's usually a bunch of extra added stuff on the grass, the jungle, the water, and the sand, and the snow places. Like, it's usually a bunch of things added on top of that. A lot of new platforms, maybe a snow castle, maybe, a lava lake or something. Different things that try to mix it up every now and then. But overall, Super Mario is just really fucking fun. Like, there's so much fun shit to do in these games. If you buy a Mario game, you have hours and hours and hours of playtime, and I honestly really appreciate and love that. so much. Like, just so damn much. Man, there really isn't much you can say to make me hate Super Mario, and honestly, I genuinely believe that the Mario series deserves to be my number 2, because it's the series that has consistently given me nothing but fun memories. And hey, all Nintendo has to do is add a little bit more character development and storytelling, and I'm pretty sure it could easily be my number 1. If not for one thing. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Before we get to the number 1, let's go ahead and go over some honorable mentions of video games that probably would have made the list if not for the other one's existence. So let's start off with Final Fantasy. Yeah, this game almost made the list until I realized I haven't actually played most of Final Fantasy. I've only really played Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy XIII, and Final Fantasy XIV and 15. But besides that, I have not really played much of Final Fantasy. Also, I'm not that much of a fan of turn-based RPGs. I just think they take way too long and can sometimes suck me out of the story, you know, a lot. Like, a ton. Next up is Pokemon. Same thing with Final Fantasy, I'm not too much of a fan of turn-based RPGs, but goddamn, Pokemon is one of my favorite RPG franchises to go to. I love playing these games, but recently, and by recently I mean like the past, well, ever since the 3DS era, the 3D Pokemon games have never been anywhere near as fun as the 2D ones. Like, seriously, let me enjoy some Black and White, or Black 2 and White 2, and keep that Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire bullshit away from me, because I am not that much of a fan of those games, alright? I'm just not. Then we get to, next up, well, Crash Bandicoot. I love Crash Bandicoot. In fact, if I had to put it on this list, I'd probably put it as number 11. Crash is definitely, you know, a really good franchise in my opinion, and I love the original trilogy to death. It's hard as balls, and I get pissed off all the time when playing it, but I still love the original trilogy and genuinely believe that Crash Bandicoot is a fantastic franchise. I don't own Crash 4 yet, because again, I don't have a PlayStation 4 or 5, but I will be getting Crash 4 sometime soon, and you better bet your bottom ass cheek I will be playing through the entirety of it, since I've already played through it over my friend's house. I play a lot of my video games thanks to my friends. But my main reason why it's only probably going to end up as number 11 is simply because it kind of had a long time where we just didn't get any good Crash Bandicoot games. Like, I'm okay with Wrath of Cortex and Twinsanity, but everything after that and before the Insane Trilogy was fucking awful. In fact, the same thing goes for Spyro the Dragon. Yeah, after the original trilogy, the Spyro series just kind of fell off. And while I do like Skylanders, I consider that to be an entirely different franchise from Spyro. Like, I do not consider it to be these to be Spyro games. Spyro isn't even that important of a character, and while I think the Skylanders franchise has a fuck ton of potential to come back, I'm sorry, it's not Spyro to me. I just don't see this as Spyro, and I consider it its own franchise. Thank God the Spyro Reignited trilogy created just an amazing remake for the original Spyro games, but overall, the Spyro franchise doesn't have enough good games in it for me to really consider it to be one of my top favorites. But if I had to put it on the list, it would probably be number 12. Actually, you know what? Scratch what I said about who'd be number 11. Number 11 is going to Psychonauts. These are some of the most creative video games I've ever played in my life. And yes, I have to say it, Psychonauts 1 and 2 are fucking phenomenal. Hell, Psychonauts Rhombus of Ruin is a really decent VR game. But the main reason why I don't have it anywhere on the list is simply because it doesn't have that many games in its series. Psychonauts 1 is a very old game, and it feels like an old game, and the controls aren't necessarily the best. Hell, the combat in that game is actually pretty fucking bad, and well, you can definitely see why the developers didn't want to focus on it that much, and improved it for the second game. The second game is a perfect evolution of everything the first Psychonauts game introduced. Hell, its story is even better than the first Psychonauts game. But again, it still has a few big flaws in its storytelling, and characters I do believe could have been done a little bit better. Then again, they did kind of have to rush that game out of the door, so I'm not going to blame it too much. Next up on my honorable mentions, and last for my honorable mentions, is going to be none other than the one, the only, super fighting robot, Mega Man. And you know what? Let's throw Metroid in there too. I haven't actually played many Metroid games. I've only played the 3DS Metroid games, the original Metroid 2, and Metroid Other M. Alongside a few of the other I think like one other Metroid Prime game, but that's about it. When it comes down to it, I've also have the exact same experience with Mega Man. I've only played certain Mega Man games, and while yes, there are plenty of collections I really should have gotten my hands on sooner, I do believe that the top-down shooter of Mega Man and Metroid are pretty damn great in my opinion. I love the freedom Mega Man gives you, and I love the gameplay of Metroid, but they've never been anywhere near my favorites. If I had to put them on the list, I'd probably put them both about 15 and 14, and they'd probably swap places every now and then. So with all of that being said, and all my honorable mentions are kind of gone, let's just go ahead and say that we should probably mosey on over to the number 1 spot. So, when it comes down to it, we're here at my number 1. My number 1 favorite video game series of all time. So I just want you to imagine amazing stories, amazing puzzles, a bunch of great music, graphics, and a fuck ton of tightly knitted gameplay that knits it all together. And honestly, that's God of War. The God of War series is fucking phenomenal. It may not be perfect in the eyes of many people, but it is fucking fantastic. The original trilogy and the prequels have some of the best gameplay I have ever seen in any video game whatsoever. The multitude of powers and abilities you can use, the phenomenal differentiating weapons you have at your disposal, and the amazing amount of platforming, puzzle solving, and overall just fantastic set pieces make the games infinitely memorable, with 10 times more amazing worlds built inspired by the likes of Greek and Norse mythology. Speaking of Norse mythology, the Norse games have some of the best combat and puzzle solving I've seen in any video game whatsoever. The realms are beautiful to explore, and honestly, the one thing that ties it all together is the phenomenal stories. The original trilogy and prequels of God of War spent a lot of time focusing on telling a story about a man, a Spartan warrior who once fought with honor and bravery to protect his people, losing his humanity after he becomes the God of War, wanting to wage war on an entire pantheon of people, only to realize at the end that all his vengeance has done is destroy the world he once knew and loved. Then in the Norse games, we get to see this same man go through one of the best we get to see him go through one of the best redemption arcs of all time. He ends up raising a son, an amazing character, Atreus, who learns that he too is a god and has compassion and learns that he can use his amazing power to change and grow into a better man in order to help his father and the people he loves and cares for. We get to see Kratos teach this young boy that he does not have to be a destroyer out of vengeance, out of mercilessness, but he can become a symbol of hope for those who need it. We get to see Kratos' struggle with not reliving his mistakes, only for him to realize that even if it is his fate to destroy, he does not have to do it out of vengeance alone. The stories allowed him to grow, make new friends, gain a new family, lose some of that family, and still come to the conclusion that one day he will not just be a god that will be feared by many, but a god praised and worshipped as a hero. And all of this happens throughout a series of fantastic games that have combat that basically, in every way, shape, and form, revolutionized how combat video games play.
God of War was the first of its kind. And even if the Norse trilogy takes inspiration from the Dark Souls levels of video games, it honestly perfects those games in a way that allows for casual players to enjoy them. And honestly, that's God of War. It's number one on the list because it's one of the few video game franchises that is not only consistently great with every single game. Sure, you could argue Chains of Olympus and Ascension suck, but I personally really enjoyed them. But at the end of the day, these games have so much, and I mean so much to offer. Great characters, great stories, and phenomenal gameplay that as long as you learn how to properly use and mix up your combos and match your skills, you can enjoy every second of it. The platforming is fantastic, the puzzles are really great, and the characters make me cry. And there's really only so many different ways I can say how good this series is. When it comes down to it, this is what video games are supposed to be. Sure, we don't need games exactly like God of War in order for them to be perfect. But what God of War does is something that I've very rarely seen from any other video games, where the gameplay doesn't just reflect the story, but the story is perfectly tied in and used to exacerbate the gameplay. In other words, God of War, from the original up until Ragnarok, is the perfect way to create interactive storytelling. And it's why my favorite video game franchise of all time is God. I just want to thank you all so much for watching this video. This one was very personal to me, and yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but hey, if you guys have a top 10 favorite list or a top 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever type of list you have on your favorite video games, please, for the love of God, comment it down below. And quick little update, I plan on getting my next big Sonic video out either before or after Christmas. And I say before or after because editing this video might take me a little while. But even with all of that being said, I really hope you all enjoyed this video, and I just want to thank you all so much for watching. So with all of that being said, thank you all so much, and remember, everything I play, everything I say, and everything I sing, I do it for love.
Don't you wanna feel right again? Don't you wanna feel whole? Don't you wanna feel